Horror is a genre that encompasses a lot of different flavors. You've got some that dip into the survival action side of things, like Resident Evil or Silent Hill,
Oh my god.
while others put more of a focus on stealth, forcing you to avoid the various monsters and threats. Just like how I avoid my ex-wife when she comes to collect alimony. It's rare that you see a game that combines both ends of the horror spectrum as well as Gloomwood. Inspired by the classics of the early PC era, Gloomwood is a survival horror romp with a heavy focus on stealth over scares. You take the role of an unnamed doctor who is basically trapped in the middle of London during COVID. An unknown affliction has taken over the town of Gloomwood, a dark corruption enforced by the town's huntsmen, which are in turn led by the town's resident goth mommy, the Countess. Why you're in this wondrous town that God forgot is a mystery, and the only thing that the game clues you in on is that you are an outsider in the town of Gloomwood, and for some reason of a very high interest to the Countess herself. But not all hope is lost, as you still have at least one ally in the old lighthouse keeper. His motives are unknown, and you may be wary to trust him, but he's all the help you're going to get, so you might as well deal with it. As the game is currently in early access, there's not a lot of story to be had, and what little story details there are leave you with more questions than answers. But the minor story elements, the quintessential horror game notes, and the horrifying aesthetics of Gloomwood itself make for a pretty good world-building experience, which is perhaps one of the best parts of the game so far. The greatest fear is the fear of the unknown, and if there's one thing this game excels at, it's keeping you in the dark. Figuratively and literally. This is largely due to the fact that, like I said, the game is in early access, and there's just not that much content here. Especially for $20, but you didn't hear that from me. There are even whole sections of the game currently blocked off from exploration. But from the overall vibe of Gloomwood, holding back on the story elements seems to be this game's stick, and drip-feeding story content like this can be a pretty good thing. It keeps the player's mind running and helps you come up with your own explanations as to why everything is the way it is. An example of this I love is the description on the Huntsman's rifle item. A makeshift shoddy hunting rifle. The grips are built for the distorted proportions of the huntsman and cannot be handled by average humans. Outwardly, the huntsmen have a fairly normal appearance. What, you think they look scary? Learn to respect the drip. In all seriousness, the outfits of the huntsmen are obviously unnerving. In a way, they seem to mimic the look of traditional plague doctors, but with their own unique flair. Aside from this, they look recognizably human. However, this little bit of lore tells us that they're anything but, and this delicious story fragment can go completely missed if you don't pick up one of these items, and it's just enough story content to make our minds race. If the huntsmen, the most normal-looking enemies in the game, are twisted abominations, imagine what horrors lie even deeper within Gloomwood. The game's narrative philosophy extends into its gameplay as well. Gloomwood isn't an overly difficult game, but it doesn't hold your hand and tell you where to go every step of the way. Right at the beginning, the lighthouse keeper tells you to make your way to the lighthouse, leaving you to your own devices without even as much as a kiss on the lips. It's entirely up to you to figure out where to go and what to do next. The best example of this is the cave level. Your only way out is blocked off by an electrified door. Using only a handful of strewn about notes and your own wits, you have to figure out where the generator is, how to get to it, and how to turn it off. No objective markers and no canned exposition from the main character. Now to the average Genshin Impact gamer, this might seem like a bit much. I mean, what is this, 2005? Levels are extremely expansive and open-ended. There is no one right way to go in any point in this game. It's up to you what paths you take, what enemies you kill, and how much of the world you end up discovering. Multiple times I found myself at a crossroads, deciding which ways to go and which ways to ignore. Even with how little there is content-wise in this game, there were still multiple areas I never had a chance to explore. Once this game has a full release, I see replayability being very high for this game. Gloomwood is exceptionally slow-paced. Taking your time is necessary for survival in more ways than one. Busting balls at Mach 10 is sure to get you an axe to the face, but as with the story, you'll likely miss out on a lot of valuable supplies if you try to rush through everything. I tried to spend time with the game to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I was still struggling for a lot of supplies by the end of the game, especially when it came to ammo. You can even miss out on extremely important items like brand new weapons if you aren't careful. Soon after completing the first level, I discovered a house that had not only a lot of supplies, but a revolver as well. Exploring this house was completely optional, and I could have missed it entirely if I had decided to stay on the beaten path. Stealth is your biggest ally in Gloomwood and one of the only things keeping you from meeting a violent end. Now, it doesn't do anything revolutionary with the stealth mechanics, but everything here is solid, with a little bit of jank and crust. Ironically enough, for a horror game, the darkness is probably your biggest friend. Staying in the shadows keeps you out of sight, with your overall stealth being tracked by a special ring given to you by the lighthouse keeper. If the ring is dark, you're stealthing with the best. If there's a bit of shine, you're partially hidden but can still be easily spotted. And if the ring is shining bright, you're sticking out like a sore dick. Positioning also impacts your overall sneakiness. Staying crouched and low to the ground is better than standing up straight, even if you're completely covered by shade. Sound is also of major importance, and enemies are drawn to even the slightest noise. Depending on how big-brained of a gamer you are, this can be your biggest asset or your greatest hindrance. As with every stealth game of the past 10 years, bottles and loose bullet casings can be tossed to make an audible distraction, while walking on hard surfaces like metal or through leaves or bushes can lock enemies onto your exact position. Sneaking and staying low helps compensate for your obnoxious clod stomping. You can even sneak while standing straight up, to prevent sacrificing as much of your movement speed in exchange for overall concealment. Mastering the stealth mechanics and abusing them when needed is absolutely necessary for survival in Gloomwood. Proper stealth can be so beneficial. Towards the beginning of the game, I felt like the main character was a little bit overpowered. Your cane sword is the first weapon you'll find in the game, and likely the one you'll be using the most. Its silence is a bonus, but its biggest appeal comes from its ability to instantly kill most enemies. You can charge your attacks with the sword to dish out a backstab, which when properly timed is a one-hit kill. At the start of the game, I was killing enemies left and right. I had so many confirmed kills, I felt like a regular Navy SEAL. I was even going out of my way to kill enemies just because I could. You know, doing the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do in a survival horror game. But as the game went on and got more difficult, I was thankful to have the backstab at my disposal. Enemies quickly ramp up in number and develop more ways to counter your techniques, like wearing armor to prevent backstabs or holding torches to reduce the amount of shade you can hide in. Eventually, you'll even encounter dogs
¿Quieres?
that can track you through sight and smell, forcing you to change up your playstyle even more. Currently, the biggest drawback to the game's stealth is the enemy AI. It's not terrible by any means, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it wasn't a little crusty. Enemies can spot you at a moment's notice, only for them to forget you even existed if you step into the shadows quickly enough. I guess this is supposed to mimic when an enemy kind of catches you out of the corner of their eye, but it's really easy to just blatantly walk in front of an enemy and have them forget you're even there once you turn a corner. Stealth is arguably so important for this game that it trivializes other aspects of it, namely the combat. Exploring enough, you can get your hands on a couple new weapons, like a revolver and a shotgun. In true survival horror fashion, ammo for these weapons is extremely limited, so you have to pick and choose when you use them, if you use them at all. If you're unaware, guns is loud, and enemies are often clustered together in groups, meaning if you fire off a shot, you're attracting a lot of attention. Plus, why would you even use a gun when you can insta-kill with your sword? Guns and ammo will crowd your already limited inventory, mostly because the suitcase you stole from Leon is as teeny as my weenie, not because the game floods you with ammo and supplies. You'll never feel like using your guns because the sword is just so powerful, but you'll be too afraid to get rid of them because what if you encounter that one enemy that is just too strong to backstab? Now, I've gone on and on about the stealth gameplay, but what about the horror? Gloomwood, at its core, is a survival horror game, but it doesn't steep too heavily into the scares. On the wide spectrum of horror, you've got Resident Evil 4 at the kinda scary end, Silent Hill 2 right in the middle, and Mario's early years preschool fun on the piss your pants and cry from fear level. Even with it being fairly light on the frights, the game does manage to send a chill down your spine now and again. Most directly, this comes from the game's environment. The town of Gloomwood is purposefully unsettling. Combine that with the unending stream of huntsmen stalking you at every turn, and you are constantly kept on edge, rarely feeling like you have a chance to stop and collect yourself. Specific levels like the caves and what little bit of the tavern you're allowed to explore are absolutely dripping in eldritch horror. Moments like these are where I feel the game shines the brightest, and it's pretty ironic because these are the moments where you can barely see 2 feet in front of your face. The palpable horror mixed with the tense stealth gameplay is the perfect storm for genuine fear. It's sad that these 2 moments are pretty brief in comparison to the rest of the game that's available now. For an early access title, Gloomwood is shockingly polished, especially compared to the other early access schlock that gets crapped out onto the Steam store. I encountered no bugs in my playthrough, but I could say the controls could use a little tightening. Basic movement was fine, but movements like climbing ropes, mantling, and swimming can be a little finicky. All in all, Gloomwood is a game to keep an eye on. The gameplay is stellar, and the world is one of the most immersive I can think of in recent memory. Though I have to say, I do not recommend buying the game in its current state. With how little content there really is when you get down to it, $20 is a bit much for a game this short. I've bought a few other early access games for around this same price, and they've offered way more in terms of overall content while lacking on the polish that Gloomwood does have. But for a game that would have been a free demo back in the mid-2000s, $20 is a little bit too much, especially when I can use that money to buy the epic Fortnite ninja skin. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do hit the like button, as it does help out the channel a lot, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. And please do let me know what you thought of Gloomwood in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.